Good morning, everyone.
What's going
Hello,
on?
Matt.
What's going on, man? Where do you find a cow with no legs?
I'm already laughing. Where?
Wherever you left it.
I lost. I already laughed. You didn't even get the joke out. Something about Matt's face sometimes makes
Something
me
about
laugh.
your face.
Your face makes me laugh. Well, I mean, it's good to laugh, but unfortunately, my obese parrot passed away.
What?
But it's a huge weight off my shoulders.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
It's not a good day to hold it together, folks.
That was pretty good.
Oh, all right.
I'm gonna
Well,
use that.
yeah, the lead up, if you could have heard that, it was a little bit ridiculous. So it kind of got me excited before we started. So I guess I lose because I laughed first. I was laughing before we even started. Look at Matt's silly face, start laughing. What am I going to say? I do have a quick story for you, like a serious one. So I went to get my haircut this morning. And this is for anyone listening that owns a business. I mean, customer service is really easy, right? And sometimes when you're in the business that we're in, which is customer experience, customer service, and you're the one in charge of building that, I'm sure that when you go to a business, you can't help it. It's like you pay attention to all these little nuances and you appreciate things that are done well, and you're like, ooh, when it's not done
absolutely.
well. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like a curse of knowledge. You can't even go out and have a meal because you're like, you're analyzing.
Could have been better.
Yeah, could have been better. Could have been better. Should have used better body language. I mean, there's so many little nuanced things that can get better in someone's business. And sometimes people do it right, and sometimes they don't. But today, I go to this place. I think it's got this really unique name. I think it's called American Barber. So imagine that. So a guy comes in. There's 4 barbers in the barbershop, right? And there's multiple locations. So I'm not calling out my particular location, but there's 4 barbers all sitting around shooting the shit, twiddling their thumbs. And a guy walks in and he says, I have a 10 o'clock with somebody, and it's a young lady's name. He literally says, I don't know, it's a young lady.
Mm-hmm.
And they are like, oh, well, let me check. And they check the computer, like, I don't have you in here. Are you sure you booked it? He's like, well, I'm pretty sure. And they're like, well, what's the lady's name again? Well, there's no females even working at this time. And he says, well, I don't know. Let me check my phone. So he checks it, and they're like, let me check in the back. Let me check in. He literally says in the process, hey, if there's anybody here that can cut hair, I'll just get a haircut while I'm here,
Right.
But they spend the entire time trying to figure out what's wrong. Where did you book it now? Are you sure? Are you sure? And it turns out by the time it's over, he ended up booking it at a place, instead of American Barber, it's called like American Haircut, as an example. But they had the opportunity to be like, look,
Customer standing right there.
there's 4 barbers with nothing to do. There's a customer standing there with his money hanging out of his pocket who would love to get his hair cut. And they spend 5 minutes trying to troubleshoot and prove why he's wrong, why he didn't book it. And he literally is like, if someone's here that can cut my hair, I'll just take a haircut now, And he gets so irritated with the process that he's like, never mind. And he just turns around and leaves.
For real?
And then they say, people are just weird. Like he's the one that booked it wrong. And I'm thinking, man,
Did you mention that during your haircut?
I did. As a matter of fact, I couldn't help it.
Did you
I couldn't help myself.
Let me see
Well,
your
my
hair.
guy
That's why
was
you're
just
wearing a
kind of
hat
like
right now.
observing it, looking over there. And I go, it would have been pretty easy. Someone could have just cut his hair and then they might have had a customer for life. But instead, everyone argued about who was wrong and who did what and where's this mysterious woman that doesn't even work there and how could he have booked that? And maybe he should double check his phone. And the guy's just like, screw it, and walks out, and he'll end up at Great Clips or something down the street. So just come on.
Did you say that to him for real?
I didn't say all of that, but I said, well, I think I said tongue in cheek, I think he was just looking for a haircut.
Did he respond?
And he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, right. I mean, he's probably the most senior guy in there.
Right.
So I think if it was up to him, he would have just grabbed him. And afterwards, and everyone in there is from a certain part of the world. I'm not sure where. And so they all speak the same language. And he was speaking to them in their native tongue after I left. And it seemed a little bit like
American barbershop?
Right. Yeah. Right. I know. It's crazy. Like I'm at the American barbershop. No one speaks English, but I think he was telling them in so many words, like, listen, if somebody comes in and they want to get a haircut, maybe you should just give them a haircut.
Yeah, just take care of them.
Intuitive. God. Anyway, it's not that difficult to make people happy.
Yeah. I was hoping you didn't insult them. You are wearing hats. I didn't know if they got mad and gave you a little crazy little cut there.
Give me a mohawk.
Gave me like the Great Kips special that I usually get.
Well, the good thing about you is you have a great shaped head, so you can just like give me a level 2 all over my head and it looks great. I can't do that.
Do you got like weird lumps and stuff on there?
No, it's just big and like a giant light bulb. I can't do that.
A giant light bulb?
It is, and it's moving back on my head, and all kinds of shit's happening, man. It's not good.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on up there.
Oh,
there is. So
what we got going on today? Why'd you drag me in here?
Why am I on this podcast? Today, I want to talk about whether or not you should franchise your business. And I know it seems weird because we're always teaching things about franchising, but this was motivated by a talk I'm doing. By the time this comes out, it'll already have happened. But I'm flying up to New York tomorrow, and I'm sitting on a panel on Thursday morning talking about whether you should license and or franchise your business. And sometimes in the process, I've had many candidates ask me when they're shopping for Alloy or looking at Alloy as a candidate, why we went to franchising. Because we had a very successful business model before.
Yeah.
And if it's so profitable, which can be, why wouldn't we just open more corporate stores? And so I've had people say, why did you go to franchising? So I thought I would talk about franchising in general today, why you should or should not do it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's just a personal decision. But I think we do have a small contingency of people that listen to this that do own gyms, and I think that they might be thinking about franchising at some point. And I just want to lay out like our lens on why we did it and what you really need to have in place to make it work.
Okay,
and I mean, It's early innings for us, but so far so good. We're doing really well, and we're validating well, and things are going great. So, but I think it would be interesting for some people to hear why we did it and what it takes.
Yeah, like a lot of different, like literally your own business to licensing, helping, gyms everywhere to master like a franchisor. Helping, like that's a lot of, you're all over the place, man.
I know. Well, and that's another thing we talk about too. Just remind me as we go through this to talk about like the amount of focus that it takes on the best opportunity vehicle. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to your point, our trajectory, you guys, has been, we didn't approach franchising, flippantly or overnight. Like we didn't open a gym, run it for 3 years and be like, this thing's dope, let's franchise it. It's like, that's not the way to do it, right? So for us, the unique backstory that we have is that we had a brick and mortar, we had a hiccup in the business, we came back with a different business model that landed us on a very high revenue per square foot, put me on the radar for speaking and consulting. Eventually speaking, consulting led to a licensing, which was a white labeled version of what we did, powering other people's business.
Yep.
And then that led to me buying an educational company called the NFBA. And then it led to creating a mastermind group of our own. We were coaching other studio owners and leadership, again, more public speaking worldwide. And to the end of 2019, when we decided, listen, again, we had a lot of boutique fitness people coming to us for help. And they wanted us to power their sales system and write their workouts and do all these things. And they were people like us. And so it's like, well, it's one thing to help out a big gym model be better at coaching, or a private, a friend of yours who owns a private personal training gym. But to help a franchised boutique brand didn't make a lot of sense. And we had already sat on, I had sat in a really good seat in other franchises like a Gold's Gym or an Anytime Fitness, which are amazing at what they do. So I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about what to do, maybe what not to do, and what we could package up and bring to market. Plus, we had 30 years of market testing to understand where there was a real gap in the market, right? So maybe we'll start there. Should you franchise your business? I would say that you need to have something absolutely unique.
Sure.
I think, there's 3,800 franchisors right now in the United States. I can't remember the number. Geez, I just looked at the article before because I'm referencing an article for my panel discussion on Thursday. But I think it's some 10,000. That might be way overstated. But there's very few number of people who buy franchises every year. And I mean candidates who get into franchising.
Right.
When you look at that versus the number of franchises that are available,
right.
It's not equitable. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would you start a franchise?
It's not hard to see why some people don't make it out of the gate.
Right. And then when you, I'm sounds like I'm doom and gloom, but I'm just trying to give people a realistic expectation. The percentage of people that make it past 20 franchises open to then make it past 50 to then make it to 100, it is exponentially lower. It gets down into the single digit percentages for franchises that will get 100 franchises open. Now, why is that? Well, maybe you sell well out of the gate, but then you don't validate and the whole thing just peters out, right? I think the biggest thing is you're undercapitalized. And that's what I want people to hear on here. I mean, you need, I would estimate at least, and this is at least, a $2 million runway to launch a franchise.
Sure.
So if you don't have private equity money or somebody backing you with deep pockets, you better have some money saved up. Now, thankfully for us, we've had successful businesses in the past, so we've bootstrapped it would be the word, but we can fund the whole growth on our own.
Sure.
Because we have other businesses that feed the franchise, which is great. If you don't, this is not something you can approach on a shoestring budget. And so if you wanted to franchise successfully, you're going to need to get funds, capital. And raising capital typically at that stage early on is going to mean giving up a big chunk of your business.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're negotiating for at the time when you have the shortest lever possible, right?
Sure.
You don't have anything. So it's like, hey, will you fund my project? And they're like, yeah, you're the sweat equity guy. We're the money guys. Chunk. Yeah, you're going to do all the work and they're going to fund it for you. But you're going to give up the lion's share of your company for that privilege. And I mean, that's okay if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going to be very profitable. Like, look at was that the Angie's List lady, right? She owns like 1% of her business or something crazy, but the thing's worth like $1 billion.
Well, 100%. And again, when you look at the percentages that hit, right? Angie's List is in rare air. Now, she's not even a franchise, but still.
No, I'm just talking pieces of your company.
No, 100%. And you're right. I mean, listen, 10% of $1 billion is better than, all of nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So I get that. But I think getting into franchising, people should understand, unless you've got somebody backing you, which is going to mean that you're going to give up a big chunk of the company. I think more importantly for most of the entrepreneurs listening, you're giving up control. Right. So it's one thing to just give up a percentage of your business, but if you give up the majority of voting shares or whatnot, you might have a company that doesn't know your space saying, no, we want to go here. Right. No, we want to go here. And they're pulling the strings, right? And they have the biggest, again, they got the biggest hammer because they've got the most money. So it's just something to think about. You can't approach it on a shoestring budget. It doesn't work that way. And undercapitalization is one of the main reasons that franchises fail. Mm-hmm. So again, money, first of all. Now, second, we've had the question about if your offering is very profitable, why wouldn't you just expand corporately? Mm-hmm. And that is not a bad strategy. I mean, obviously, there's plenty of big companies, that are all corporately owned that are not franchised.
Sure.
Some are a mix, right?
Yep.
Like if you look at, say, Gold's Gym as an example, they were about 50-50 at one point between corporately owned stores and franchises.
Yep.
Now, if you look at, say, Anytime as an example, they have 5,000 locations. I think they had maybe 40 corporate clubs. Their lens was you don't really invest in more corporate clubs until investing more capital into your marketing has diminishing returns. Like even if we spent twice as much, we're not going to get the return. We're already spending enough in our marketing. So what else could we do? It's like, well, opening corporate clubs, and the reason that you do that is it gives you like laboratories. Those are typically places where you test new software. Like in our case, it would be new workouts, whatever those things are. So it's good to have a few, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's good for your franchisees to know why you have a few. But the main reason that we didn't go with just opening a bunch of corporate stores, which we could, it was more just an intrinsic motivation to help other people. I mean, I'm not saying I've made all the money I ever want to make, but you know me, I live pretty simply. So, and I've saved a lot of money. So it is about the money because that's how you keep score and that's the game, right? That's how you get the validation as an entrepreneur. But to me, it's about building people. So building people on our team that they can go from where they are to learning everything about franchising. Well, it can be a very lucrative business. And so like for you guys on the team, you're learning so much about franchising.
Absolutely.
That it sets you up long-term, whether it's in Alloy or not. It's like, okay, you're learning everything you need to know about a very lucrative business and you get a really deep knowledge on something you can really, make a great living doing it. So there's building of the team. And then secondly, it's giving other people the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. That's really important to me because for me, it's all I've ever done. And I think there's a couple of ways to look at return on investment. And one of them is financial, which is the most obvious. I think it goes without saying that you don't even bring a franchise to market if it doesn't have a financial return on investment because no one's going to buy the thing, right? Exactly. It's the first question. It's high level.
Yeah.
But I think then you shift gears and you get into what I've heard described as emotional return on investment. I really like that term. And what I would describe that is like what happens to you internally, emotionally, growth, as an individual when you become an entrepreneur, because it's very difficult at times, right? It's like the risk tolerance, the betting on yourself, the upskilling of your skill set to be able to be an entrepreneur. It means you have to be a leader, especially in fitness, right? Because you're like leading a community of people. So you're leading your team. You have to hire good people. You're giving them opportunities, right? So for me, that's one of my favorite things. I mean, I think entrepreneurship, I teach a little class at the local college on it. It's one of my favorite topics because I really believe in what it can do for you for financial freedom, but I really like what it does for people on their emotional return on investment. And so intrinsically, that's why I would rather franchise than open corporate stores. Might sound corny, but it's not. And there's a lot of ways to make money. I could make money doing either one. I really enjoy growing people and giving others the opportunity to realize their entrepreneurial dreams. I mean, how many times, Matt, have you heard people here on our confirmation days saying, I've always wanted to open my own business. It's a dream I've always had.
Right. Yeah.
Franchising is the vehicle for that. It's like, great. And we have a really buttoned up process that we can hand somebody and it will give them the opportunity to fulfill a dream.
Right.
I mean, the video that I show at the end of every, again, confirmation day is like love, you're going to spend an inordinate amount of time in your life working. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Right. And so I think that's something that people don't always get to realize in their lives.
No, I mean, I've been very fortunate being here, and you've always given me an opportunity for growth, like just my own personal. But I've already seen early innings with just our franchisees, like growth, right? Hell, we had one guy, Landon, that worked for us for how long? 7-8 years. You should see where he's at now. He's about to open his second location in Charlotte. He's like an entirely different person.
Right.
So it is really cool to see.
Yeah, you were telling me about that the other day. Like, it's fun to be proud of like your peers and your friends, right? Because like, here's Landon who, again, he's the again, I guess you'd say like the operator or what have you in Charlotte. He was a personal trainer here. Towards the end of his tenure here, he was sort of running up against this glass ceiling. He was getting a little bored, like, what's next for me? I don't know what to do. Yep. You could feel a little bit of frustration from him. So when our client bought the Charlotte market, they really liked him as a coach and said, hey, can I steal him to Charlotte? And I was absolutely thrilled for him. It's like, absolutely you can. He's ready for something else, right? Yep. And, you never know whether that person's going to step up or not. But to see them step into this new role, own it, and then now hear them reflecting back to you the things that you have been maybe telling him 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's just awesome. And that's what you were telling me the other day.
Change, total growth. It's like, he's just moved on with his life. And it really does that, folks. I mean, we have other ones that literally had entirely different careers, like, working in corporate, and now they're running their own gyms, and like just to see their change and their outlook. I mean, it's awesome. It really is.
Yeah. And I think they'll say, I've even seen some quotes from those folks, even this early on, like, hey, it's really hard, but it's awesome. Right. And that's kind of that, like, anything worth having is really hard. And if it's not really hard, it's not going to be really awesome. It's just duh, right? It's like, there's got to be some struggle to make the thing worth the thing, right? You don't want something given to you. So to double down, to bet on yourself, to take a risk, it's financial, it's emotional, all those things. And then to see it come to fruition and to know that you had to literally level up your skills to make it happen. Like, me watching that is probably the most gratifying thing. It really is. And so that's why we did it ultimately. And we'll probably open a couple more corporate stores just to have more laboratories, right? But for the most part, I really enjoy giving other people the opportunity to be entrepreneurs and to see them realize their dreams and to watch them go through these transitions. And it's almost like I can relive my entrepreneurial journey through them, like watching them in each step. Because I can remember like exactly how I felt when they were there. And it's kind of fun to be able to offer that little bit of like, well, I know you're there right now, but here's why. And if you want to, I know you have imposter syndrome. I know you don't feel like you are in good enough shape to own a personal training place or whatever those things are. But here's what you should really be thinking about. And to watch them kind of like grow and evolve it's just the best, man. I mean, it is really cool that basically you've boxed up 30 years of experience. 30 years of experience wrapped up into one, nice and neat. Like, you really can't ask for much more than that. Well, and I think ultimately, and it's one of those things where it takes a little bit of time. You need to get a little longer in the tooth before you feel this way. But I'm not really doing this for me in any way, shape, or form. I know it sounds corny. I don't think you and I have ever had this conversation. Like, I'm doing this for our team. That's the most fun thing, right? First of all, it's you guys. Secondly, it's the franchisees. Yeah. And third, it's the communities that they're going to help. Right. That's the only reason to do it. Yeah. Because I've said it a million times. I think I've already said it twice today on this podcast. There's a lot of ways to make money. This, to me, is very difficult to obviously look at the percentages, making it into the single digits for the people that will have 100 units of any franchise open. I want to be there, but not for the sake of any other reason than when I'm there, I will have grown my team, I will have grown entrepreneurs, and they will have grown their communities, right?
Yeah, it is really cool. Yeah. I mean, it's, you talk about franchising, you probably, in licensing, you've probably had many of these conversations over the years. You spoke to lots of different brands. The thing that you see a lot, especially in our industry, is there's always a million, fitness franchises popping up, whether it's like, rowing, or maybe it's, CrossFit style or what's like that. Have you had to have any conversations lately like that? Like, were you talking people out of it?
You mean talking about of other concepts?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds really self-serving, and maybe there should be a different lens on it, but I only know what I know. And most of what I know is not from running my own franchise. It's from 30 years in the industry, looking at all brands, right? And what we know for sure is that if you get into a fitness concept that is based on a trend or a single modality like a bike or a rower or whatever, or a piece of technology that can be disrupted, you are putting yourself at a lot of risk. We've seen things like cycling come and go 4 or 5 times, right? Now, you could always argue, well, there's still room for the best. I'm like, maybe, but when there's 18 of them in market, right, and you look at the low number of percentage of people that are even going to buy a franchise every year from way more franchisees than there are buyers, and franchising keeps growing. But before you enter franchising, do you even want to enter the fray where you're in a market that's adding more inventory to a not growing buyer market? Now, I think right now, post-pandemic and the great resignation that we've talked about, there's probably more people looking into franchising, so that number might bump a little bit. Right. But it's not going to bump exponentially as much as the growth of the number of products that are going to be on the shelf, which means the number of franchises. Then you look at, okay, well, then there's just fitness then from that. Well, how many fitness franchises are there? It's almost a running joke that fitness and food are just completely saturated, right? And so if you're going to enter a busy arena or, industry, which is franchising, and then you're going to enter one of the busiest verticals of a busy industry, which probably has more supply than demand, right? You better be on to something different. And when I say that, it's so hard for founders like me to not fall in love with what they do and the little nuances that they see. It better be the consumer speaking to you that you're different, not you because you've got 2 or 3 little things that are different. But from the consumer's lens, it looks exactly like the other 18.
It's like Orange Theory.
Yeah.
Basically.
But the colors are yellow, right?
Right.
And you're like, okay.
You're going to be the next chicken fast food chain.
Right. I mean, like there's always a Pepsi to a Coke. I get it. Like right now we're Coke, meaning like we're blazing this path for active aging, 45, 65, which active aging is a derogatory term, but like premium 45, 65 personal training. We sit between one-on-one and classes, right? And we are able to we attack the avatar of one-on-one, but we do it at a very good value proposition. And we still have the community building of the group. And that sounds like, oh, simple. Well, then like, I'll do that. It's like, well, good luck. I mean, it takes a lot of time to really make that thing come to life. Sure. And keep the brand promise of personal training, with scaling up to 6 people with 1 coach. But that's what we do well. And here's the most encouraging part that I've seen per what we're talking about right now, which is like the consumer better speak back to you the differences that you see, right? Now, again, remember, we approached this from 30 years of market testing and looking and what businesses churn faster, right? Who had 2 churns a bunch? Who doesn't? Why? What's a scalable model? What are the margins in a one-on-one business versus this? What are the margins in a group training thing?
Mind you, looked at all this like basically worldwide.
Yeah, I mean,
like it wasn't just here in Roswell.
From India to Tasmania and everything in between, right? And so when at the last few grand openings that I've showed up to or client events, I think the most encouraging thing is to hear the people that have joined as founding members, and then they meet me and they're like, oh, are you a personal trainer here? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I was, but I'm actually the guy who came up with this crazy idea, and they'll be like, no way, you're the founder, and I'm in from Atlanta or whatever. And they'll say, oh, okay, where's your home office? Atlanta, great. And they're like, I have to thank you for bringing this to, wherever, Charlotte, as an example. And I'm like, really? Why do you say that? And they're like, well, I mean, I'm in my mid-50s. I'm in really good shape. I used to run marathons, but I had a hip surgery, and I've tried a bunch of other fitness things, but I always get hurt. this is awesome. I just want to say thank you for bringing this to market. So when you hear consumers reflecting back to you the differentiators that you hope is what you're putting into market, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's cool.
And you see pre-sales going gangbusters, right? Because again, you're speaking to a crowd with imaging and everything that no one else is able to target, right? And so it's just super cool. And I think, that's probably understated. I think founders fall in love with their concept too much. I don't. I mean, how many times do we sit around and be like, man, we suck. We need to get better. We don't mean it because we're not. We are good, but we want to be friggin' amazing, right? And we're harder on ourselves than anybody else. I guarantee you that. Whereas I think a lot of founders are just, they're just stuck to one idea, and I've seen it, and they just double down on it no matter what, And so, again, looking at going into should you franchise your business, have a long runway, right?
Yep.
Financially. And if you don't, you're going to have to partner up, and you're going to give up a lot for that typically at the start. So that's just a personal choice of yours. I wouldn't do it, but you could. Second would be, do you really have a unique proposition? Because if you don't, I gave you the numbers. It's more inventory than there are buyers, and that's only growing, right? So should you do that? And then lastly, can you make these guys successful? And what is your real motivation? Because if it's just to grow something quickly, sell it to private equity, cash out, and go to the beach, that's going to manifest itself somehow in your business, right?
Yep.
And I think everybody would love to have that ultimate, buyout or payday as an entrepreneur in any business, whether you stay in or you are not, because that's the stamp on your project, right?
Sure.
But the why can't be that. If the why is only that, it's going to end up manifesting itself somewhere in your business, and you're going to fail because of that, or you're going to, at least you're going to stumble. Whereas with us, if my why is to do this forever because I love it, to continue, like it's the Simon Sinek's infinite game. My goal is to stay in the fucking game. How do you do that? Well, I build my team. I hire good people that are down with the culture, and they continue to evolve. We pick good franchise partners who we think we can help walk that line of entrepreneurship, right? And who are going to hire good people to come work for them, right? Who are going to help those people evolve. I mean, it's like opportunity offered to opportunity, offered to opportunity, like 4 layers deep, right? And then they're going to change the lives of their community. That's enough to get you up no matter how difficult something is. If it's literally make money, cash out, and leave, that's not that compelling, right? It's just not. So anyway, I hope that helps people understand there's a lot of ways to make a business successful. You can expand corporately. You don't have to go franchising. If you go franchising, just know it's a crowded, very competitive space. You're going to need a lot of financial runway to do it. If you have something that is truly unique and different in the market, and your consumers have told you so in more than just 1 or 2 locations in your home city, right?
Yep.
Then sure, go for it. Just be prepared for a tough road ahead. And you're going to spend a lot of money, and you're going to need a long runway, and it's going to be lumpy at the start, if you don't know what you're doing.
Do I have to call you the founder now?
Ooh, that'd be awesome. Yes, you do. God. How about Mr. Founder?
Mr. Founder. Mr. Founder, sir.
That's Sir Mr. Founder, sir, to you. The first and last word out of your pie hole ought to be sir. I love that. But anyway, this was just motivated by this talk I'm going to be doing in New York, which is should you franchise your business or not? And I sound like negative Nelly, but I just want to be realistic about it. I think it's amazing. I am so happy that we chose to go this route. We're seeing the fruits of it already. And, what is the main motivation? Helping people. So that's happening. And it's been amazing. But we didn't take the decision lightly. We approached it from a ton of evidence, right?
Yep,
and
that's
industry
what I
experience.
Heard. Experience.
Yeah, you might want to have a little bit of that. But best of luck to you guys out there. It's like, if you do franchise, I wish you all the best. I'm an abundant sky. The pie will continue to grow, hopefully. Right? Just because you're in the pie doesn't mean that my piece gets smaller if you get a small piece either. So it's we'll continue to grow that, and hopefully we'll be able to push this whole industry forward the best we can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.